My wife and daughter don't know. I'm bound to assist them. As long as I embody the identity of a husband and father and accompany them for 5 years, I can revive my family in the real world. I silently endured their cold treatment for 5 whole years. Finally, I received news of the mission's success and my departure from this world. Host, you have 3 days to say goodbye to this place. The last 3 days, I became the most perfect version of myself in their eyes. The mother and daughter specifically asked me to cook the dishes their beloved white moonlight enjoyed. I immediately nodded and went to cook for them. But they weren't used to me being so submissive and compliant. Finally, I wanted to buy some things to take back to my original world. My friends around me all teased me. You're buying so much stuff. Are you going home for the new year? I smiled and nodded. Yes, I'm going home. Mu Wanqing beside me suddenly looked at me. Her eyes showed unprecedented panic. Zhang Beizhou, aren't you an orphan? Besides me, where else do you have a home? I smiled slightly. Just kidding. Hearing this, she finally breathed a sigh of relief. I didn't explain to her. There's only one more day until I leave. Today is my birthday. I bought myself a cake. This is my last birthday in this world. Even though it's just me, I still want to celebrate it properly. I lit the candles, just about to make a wish, when the doorbell suddenly rang. Outside the door was Mu Wanqing's assistant. Seeing me, he didn't say much, just handed me the box in his hand. This is the formal wear President Mu asked me to bring you. She said to meet her on the 5th floor of the night banquet. After delivering the message and the items, the assistant didn't stay any longer. I couldn't refuse, so I had to go back to my room and change into the formal wear. Then I rushed without stopping to the address the assistant mentioned. Only after arriving did I realize it was a birthday party. At first, I thought they finally remembered that today was my birthday, and I even tidied myself up. But the next second, I saw Song Jingnian, his face beaming with a smile, walk up to me. Mr. Zhang, you're finally here. Right behind Song Jingnian were Mu Wanqing and Zhang Miaoran. As soon as they saw me, their expressions immediately changed. Mu Wanqing's face turned cold. Zhang Miaoran also tugged at Song Jingnian's sleeve, a little displeased. Dad, why did you call him here? Song Jingnian beside me glanced at me out of the corner of his eye, with a hint of smugness. I heard today is also Mr. Zhang's birthday, the same day as mine. It would be too pitiful for him to celebrate his birthday alone at home, so I asked him to come here and join the fun. After speaking, he casually pointed to the long table in the center of the banquet hall, which was filled with gift boxes of all sizes. These are all gifts that Wanqing and Miaoran prepared for me. There are so many, I can't even accept them all. Mr. Zhang, would you like to take a look? If there's anything you like, I can give it to you. Otherwise, it would be too pitiful to not receive any gifts on your birthday. Seeing his obvious intention to show off, I gently shook my head and didn't respond to his words. No, thank you. Since they are gifts for Mr. Song should keep them. Seeing that I didn't fall for his trick, Song Jingnian wasn't annoyed. He walked to the multi-tiered cake and looked at me with a smile. If you don't want gifts, then why don't you make a wish? Thinking of the wish that had just been interrupted, this time I didn't refuse. I clasped my hands together, closed my eyes, and silently whispered in my heart the wish that no one knew. I wish that from now on I will never see Mu Wanqing and Zhang Miaoran again. After making the wish, Song Jingnian still had no intention of letting me off the hook. He feigned curiosity and asked, what did Mr. Zhang wish for? Why don't you say it aloud? Before I could speak, Zhang Miaoran's confident voice came through. What else could it be? Every year he wishes for Mom and me to be safe and happy. This year must be the same. Although Mu Wanqing beside me didn't say a word, from her eyes I could tell she clearly thought the same. I also had no intention of explaining. Letting them misunderstand like this could save a lot of trouble. Song Jingnian smiled and brought over a drink, handing it to me. Mr. Zhang, it's fate, really, that our birthdays are on the same day. How about a toast? Mr. Zhang wouldn't refuse to give face, would he? As soon as he said that, Mu Wanqing and Zhang Miaoran immediately gathered around, watching me with wary eyes. I touched my chin, finding it a little amusing, and with a light chuckle, raised my glass and clinked it with Song Jingnian's. The birthday party had not yet ended. After clinking glasses, others came to offer toasts. Song Jingnian chatted generously with the guests. Mu Wanqing and Zhang Miaoran still stood by his side, accompanying him for toasts and getting him food. Someone noticed me, alone in the corner. Then they looked at the mother and daughter surrounding Song Jingnian, and discussions immediately erupted. CEO Mu is so good to Mr. Song. She doesn't even care about her own husband, always staying by Mr. Song's side. Well, Mr. Song is CEO Mu's true white moonlight, after all. If Mr. Song hadn't suddenly left back then, there wouldn't have been a chance for Zhang Beizhou to rise. If you ask me, he might as well divorce early and leave. to avoid things getting ugly in the end. You also have to consider who he married into. How could he possibly give up the status of a son-in-law to a wealthy family? The sound of their discussions was quite loud. Even in the corner, I heard their words clearly. I smiled. They didn't need to rush me. Soon I would forever and ever disappear from their lives, disappear from this world. Just then, the banquet hall suddenly became noisy. I stood up, only to find that Song Jingnian suddenly complained of stomach pain. Mu Wanqing immediately called her private doctor. After a diagnosis by the doctor, he then gravely stated, CEO Mu, Mr. Song's symptoms are those of poisoning. He needs to be quickly sent to the hospital for a stomach pump. Upon hearing this, Mu Wanqing's expression instantly turned incredibly grim. She had Song Jingnian rushed out of the banquet hall. Before leaving, she only left a chilling remark. Who did this? Find out for me. Something happened to the main character. The banquet naturally couldn't continue. The guests all left in a hurry. I also returned to the villa alone. I initially thought this had nothing to do with me. I was just waiting for the time to come, for the system to take me back to the real world. However, in the evening, several bodyguards suddenly rushed in and dragged me all the way to Song Jingnian. Zhang Beizhou, I told you that as long as you stayed in your place, I wouldn't touch your position. But you repeatedly tried to harm Jingnian. You are simply incorrigible. Zhang Miaoren, who was standing by, also glared at me, cursing, Zhang Beizhou, you despicable man. How dare you poison my father? I was suddenly dragged here, and the anger of the two, one adult and one child, swept over me. It was then that I roughly understood the reason from their words. They believed that I was the one who poisoned Song Jingnian. Furious, I quickly explained, I didn't do it. Not to mention that I'm about to leave this world. There's no reason for me to poison Song Jingnian. Even if I truly hated Song Jingnian, they were by his side the entire time. How would I even have had the chance to poison him? But they scoffed at my defense. Mu Wanqing even turned directly to Song Jingnian, her voice softening a few degrees. With a comforting tone, how do you want to deal with him? I will never cover for him. After all, he is your husband, and I wouldn't want to make you lose face, Song Jingnian said. Why don't you just hand him over to me for a day? I will make him confess. Song Jingnian looked at me, held down by the bodyguards, and a triumphant smile played on his lips. I thought they would readily agree, but no answer came for a long time. He turned his head, only to see the hesitation on Mu Wanqing's face. Zhang Miaoren also looked hesitant. Dad, you want him for a day? What do you want to do? Meeting their gazes, Song Jingnian suddenly fell silent. I wouldn't even dare to step on an ant. So how could I do anything excessive to Mr. Zhang? I just want to make Mr. Zhang realize his mistake. That's all. Although he said that, for some reason, Mu Wanqing suddenly felt a little uneasy. But in the end, perhaps she felt what he said made sense. Or perhaps she ultimately didn't want him to feel wronged. So she agreed. She merely emphasized several times that he must be returned after one day. Even Zhang Miaoren reluctantly didn't want to leave. Finally, she also gave an uneasy instruction. After one day, Dad, you must return him completely unharmed. Oh, I will, Song Jingnian said with a gentle, shallow smile. But after the mother and daughter left, his face suddenly changed. He sent people to take me back to the Song family's villa. After the large gate was shut, I clearly saw the cruel, venomous gleam in his eyes. Song Jingnian gestured to a bodyguard. The bodyguard understood and stepped forward, kicking me to the ground. He took out a rope and tied me up tightly. That kick was delivered with full force. I only felt an immense pain in my back, and I was already on the ground. Before I could recover from the pain, Song Jingnian took the whip from the bodyguard's hand and lashed me fiercely. The force was extremely heavy, and blood appeared instantly. The searing pain made me cry out. Having witnessed Song Jingnian's dual nature, I naturally knew that his taking me away certainly harbored ill intentions. But I didn't expect him to be so impatient. He thoroughly enjoyed whipping me. Immediately after, a second whip, then a third lashed down fiercely, one after another. Don't you fear failing to account for me in a day if you beat me like this? Lying in a pool of blood, I could no longer hold back my question. Hearing my question, Song Jingnian showed no trace of panic. Don't worry, he said, as long as you don't vanish into thin air. Even if I whip you until you're on your last breath, I'll still have a reason to return you. His voice was brimming with smug triumph, yet I suddenly smiled. But I'll be vanishing into thin air very soon. Song Jingnian didn't see my smile and tirelessly continued to wield the whip. The whip gradually became stained with blood. His hateful curses still echoed in my ears. Damn it! How dare you steal my woman? How dare you steal my child? I was whipped until I was covered in blood, yet I still didn't beg for mercy. So you really poisoned yourself? But didn't you want to leave back then and abandon them? Hearing these words, Song Jingnian scoffed. Even if I didn't want them, it wouldn't be your turn. I don't know what methods you used to make Wang King refuse to divorce you. My mouth was filled with the fresh, metallic taste of blood, a result of the pain I endured. Song Jingnian's complaints reached my ears, only striking me as laughable. Mu Wang King's unwillingness to divorce. Wasn't it also to fulfill his desire for freedom? He was the one who wanted to leave back then. After leaving, he was also the one dissatisfied that Mu Wang King had someone else by her side. Song Jingnian was unaware of my thoughts and whipped me harder and harder, as if to vent his anger. Whip after whip, he lashed almost to kill. Until the phone on the sofa rang, it was Mu Wang King calling. His expression shifted and he finally stopped whipping. He answered the call. On the other end, her tone was stern and direct, without a single greeting. She went straight to the point. Let Zhang Beizhou answer the phone. His face stiffened. He reluctantly handed the phone to me. His eyes held a vicious glare. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. Yet I understood his meaning from his lip movements. Dare to say a word and see what happens. I'll make sure you don't leave here alive. Jingnian hasn't done anything to you, has he? Mu Wangqing's rare concern made me silent for a long time. But I still chose not to complain at that moment. I could only manage 2 weak, breathy words. No, he hasn't. Through the phone receiver, I could hear a sigh of relief from the other end. I'll come pick you up tonight. Then, just as the call was about to disconnect, Jiang Miaoren's childish voice came through. And my call! I gave a wretched smile. I wondered what was wrong with them today, that they suddenly remembered to care about me. Could it be that they sensed I was about to leave? Seeing my silence, the breathing on the other end slightly deepened. Before she could speak again, Song Jingnian snatched the phone and hung up. He threw the whip to a bodyguard, his eyes colder than ever. Just leave him with one breath. Didn't CEO Mu say she'd come to pick him up tonight? The bodyguard hesitated, holding the whip. But Song Jingnian glared fiercely at him. I'll go out now and find a way to stall them. You just keep torturing him until dawn. Song Jingnian left, but the torture did not end. Pain with each lash of the whip engulfed my entire consciousness. Indeed, I didn't see them that night. For Song Jingnian, they had broken their promise again. Not until dawn broke did the rotating bodyguards finally cease their actions. I had long been beaten, my flesh ripped open, covered in wounds, a shocking sight. The faint roar of cars could be heard from outside the villa. The bodyguards' expressions changed drastically, and they quickly called the servants. The servants dragged me to a room, changing my clothes and cleaning the blood from me. After helping me sit on the sofa, the group vanished without a trace. When I was the only one left in the entire villa, a floating golden light suddenly appeared before my eyes. Congratulations, host. The companion task is complete. Your family in reality has been resurrected. Would you like to leave this world immediately? My heart surged with excitement, but my face had no strength left. I merely looked up at the system and asked, before I leave, can you do me a favor? The system's mechanical voice responded, what does host wish for me to do? Help me retrieve all the surveillance footage of Song Jingnian harming me and setting me up these past few days. Consider it my last gift to the mother and daughter in this world. Understood, host. Please prepare yourself. I'm about to take you home. The voice faded. Golden light fell upon me, vanishing without a trace in an instant, leaving behind only a surveillance recording quietly placed on the sofa where I had been sitting. The next second, the door opened. Mu Wangqing and Zhang Miaoren walked in first. Looking at the empty living room, the uneasy feeling in their hearts grew more intense, always feeling like something had escaped, and he couldn't hold on to it. Not seeing the person they wanted to see, Mu Wangqing's brows furrowed tightly. Looking at Song Jingnian, who was following closely behind her, where is Zhang Beizhou? He smiled somewhat reluctantly, raised his hand to point towards the sofa. Isn't he just sitting there fine? He wanted to say the person was sitting quietly on the sofa, but when he turned, he saw no one. His composure faltered slightly. The next second, his gaze sharply swept towards those bodyguards. The scoundrel suddenly vanished. The bodyguards' hearts cried out in alarm. All shook their heads, explaining to Madame Mu, when we went out, Mr. Zhang was indeed sitting on the sofa. So where is he now? Seeing everyone start to stammer, unable to give a coherent reason, Mu Wangqing felt a surge of anger rush to her head, shouted sharply. The men felt an ineffable bitterness. They couldn't tell Mu Wangqing that they had beaten me all night. With such severe injuries, logically I shouldn't have been able to leave. But ironically, I was not only absent from the living room now, they had even searched the entire villa, but found no trace of me. Zhang Miaoren also didn't know why. Since yesterday, when she and Mu Wangqing left the Song family's villa, her heart had been inexplicably anxious, until Mu Wangqing made that call in the evening. She had thought she would see him today, but upon arriving, she found he had disappeared. That uneasy feeling once again surged from the depths of her heart. She looked up at Song Jingnian with a reproach in her eyes that she herself didn't realize. Didn't Dad say he would return him unharmed today? Song Jingnian perceived the resentment in Zhang Miaoran's heart. His face paled, unconsciously looked at Mu Wangqing, seeking comfort, only to see her looking at him, with a hint of reproach in her eyes as well. In an instant, Song Jingnian felt a surge of grievance welling up from the bottom of his heart. He hadn't expected they would question him because of me. Outwardly, he showed no sign, but inwardly, his hatred for me intensified further. They were originally his wife and daughter. They had only been gone for 5 years, and they had found someone else to replace him. It was bad enough that they refused a divorce. Now Zhang Beizhou had merely disappeared, and they were already starting to blame him. I really don't know. From last night until now, haven't I always been with you all? How could I have done anything to Mr. Zhang? How can you look at me like that? But in an instant, his eyes turned red. Mu Wangqing and Zhang Miaoran immediately felt a touch of regret. Jingnian, I'm not blaming you. It's just that Zhang Beizhou suddenly disappeared now. We need to find him back first. Dad, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to blame you. Song Jingnian walked to the sofa, preparing to sit down, and saw the surveillance recording placed on the sofa. His heart filled with doubt, not knowing where this thing came from. Just as he was about to pick it up, Mu Wangqing and Zhang Miaoran, the mother and daughter who came with him, also saw that surveillance recording at the same time. They quickly took the item. What is this, a videotape? Seeing that both of them were very interested in that surveillance recording, very interested. For some reason, a voice in Song Jingnian's heart told him he couldn't let Mu Wangqing and her daughter open that videotape. Just as he was about to reach out to snatch it, the bodyguards returned, their faces pale. Reporting, still haven't found Miss Zhang. In an instant, the air became frozen. Zhang Miaoran looked at the videotape in Mu Wangqing's hand, suddenly spoke. Mom, did Uncle leave this behind? Mu Wangqing seemed to be reminded by her. Right now, no one knows where he is. The only clue seemed to be only the videotape in her hand. Speaking of this, she turned her gaze to the television opposite the sofa and casually pointed to a bodyguard. Mu Wangqing's words cut off Song Jingnian before he could finish. The bodyguard had already tremblingly stepped forward, taken the surveillance recording, and started operating it. Everyone's attention was focused on the screen, afraid that something unexpected might appear. The next second, after a crackling electrical sound, the screen clearly appeared in everyone's eyes. What appeared first was the day Song Jingnian first moved into the Mu family's house. The kitchen footage. The footage clearly showed him, after I refused his help, he still stubbornly went to get the soup and then deliberately let go, spilling the soup behind himself. Then after Mu Wangqing and Zhang Miaoran arrived, he feigned a pitiful appearance, claiming that I had deliberately spilled the soup on him. Immediately following that was the footage from the day of the birthday banquet, showing the entire process of his poisoning. Mu Wangqing watched as in the footage, after he received the beverage brought by the waiter, he stealthily took out a packet of medicine from his bag and poured it all into one of the glasses of wine. Then after undergoing gastric lavage and regaining consciousness, he cried with blurred eyes, claiming I was the mastermind. Next was the footage from yesterday after Mu Wangqing and Zhang Miaoran left Song Jingnian's villa. He smiled gently as he personally escorted the mother and daughter out of the villa, then immediately changed his expression, picked up a whip, and fiercely lashed out at me. When he called to inquire about my condition, he even threatened me not to call for help. After the call ended, with a sinister expression, he ordered the bodyguards to continue the torment, just to keep me alive. Their expressions, with the appearance of one scene after another, changed from initial shock and disbelief to unbearable pain when they saw me being tormented, until finally all transformed into hatred for Song Jingnian. Their faces were so dark, as if ink would drip from them. It was all fake unexpectedly. Song Jingnian had been deceiving them all along. Only at this moment did Mu Wangqing and Zhang Miaoran finally understand why Song Jingnian last night had put on such a pitiful act, saying he never wanted to be separated from them again. Is this what you meant by Zhang Beizhou's righteousness? Is this what you meant when you said you wouldn't harm Zhang Beizhou? Dad, didn't you say today you would return Uncle Zhang safe and sound? If just now it was merely a subconscious question, this time Mu Wangqing and Zhang Miaoran's tone only distance and accusation remained. As for Song Jingnian, after the first scene appeared, he immediately became panicked and his face turned pale. He couldn't understand how I, beaten to such a state, could still escape, and even before leaving, had left this surveillance footage from who knows where. Because of this, Song Jingnian's legs gave out, and he fell to the ground, shaking his head incessantly. Even now, he didn't forget to defend himself. Wangqing, you must believe me. I didn't do this. These videos, must have been fabricated by Zhang Beizhou to frame me. You know, I usually wouldn't even dare to step on an ant. How could I do such a thing? He was so busy defending himself that he forgot the persona he had created for himself in front of Mu Wanqing and Zhang Miaoran. How could he blurt out such a derogatory term for a person? Mu Wanqing's eyes were as dark as ink. She grabbed Song Jingnian's chin and sneered, "I was wrong." To actually believe you, a man who 5 years ago could heartlessly abandon Miao Miao and me, and then believe your words to punish Beizhou. I didn't know that you were the truly vicious one. Song Jingnian, I misjudged you. But one must always take responsibility for their mistakes, mustn't they? How do you think I should punish you? Song Jingnian saw the hatred in her eyes. Panicked, he tried to beg for mercy, his gaze searching around, finally landing on Zhang Miaoran. He looked at her for help, hoping she would plead for him. Miao Miao, quickly beg your mother. Dad knows he was wrong. You can't do this to me. Zhang Miaoran suddenly reached out and tugged at Mu Wanqing's sleeve. Seeing this, a glimmer of hope and triumph flashed in his eyes. See? What good is it if Zhang Beizhou treats Zhang Miaoran well? She still won't remember his kindness. With just one word from me, she'll still plead for me. Mu Wanqing turned to look at Zhang Miaoran, her face filled with suppressed anger. She clearly also thought Miaoran was going to plead for Song Jingnian. But the next second, her words surprised everyone. Mother, you can punish him anytime. Right now, the most urgent task is to quickly find Dad. This was the first time Zhang Miaoran had called me Dad since Song Jingnian returned. Unfortunately, I could no longer hear it, and I no longer cared for it. As for Song Jingnian, upon hearing the changed address, the slight hope that had just risen within him was instantly shattered. His eyes were filled with disbelief. He couldn't believe it. Just because of this segment of unknown origin, a suddenly appearing video, they all gave up on me. Mu Wanqing and Zhang Miaoran shouted loudly, yet the mother and daughter left without looking back, leaving behind only a few bodyguards to tie up Song Jingnian and those who had whipped me and tied them all up. Then they were sent back to the Mu family villa and locked up. Taking the remaining bodyguards, she slowly expanded the search area around the Song family villa. She searched everywhere, the Song family residence, the villa district, Bishui, and searched the entire country, yet never found any trace of me. Mu Wanqing and Zhang Miaoran, the mother and daughter, never gave up searching. They even posted reward information with the police. But 3 days, 3 weeks, 3 months, 3 years passed, and still, there was nothing. In Bishui prison, separated by a layer of special glass, Song Jingnian and the mother and daughter, Mu Wanqing sat opposite each other. He wore a striped prison uniform, his face haggard. On his exposed skin, there were crisscrossing scars. His face also had a shriveled, extremely ugly, terrifying burn scar. Outside the glass, Mu Wanqing's brows were cold and severe, showing no sympathy for his current miserable state. All these scars were inextricably linked to her actions. 3 years ago, after she learned of everything Song Jingnian had done, she brought him back to the villa. Everything he had inflicted upon me, she returned it all. Starting with the scalding soup, she personally boiled a kettle of water and poured it onto his right cheek. She showed no mercy, even as he cried and begged. However many times he had beaten me, she returned the same number of times. She beat him until he screamed incessantly and was on his last breath. If not for later, the police being called to find the missing me, which also exposed this series of events, and Song Jingnian's actions becoming public, he would have been locked in the villa, cursed by thousands. Most likely, Song Jingnian would have suffered countless more torments at her hands. But even after entering prison, his life didn't improve. He was called a shameless homewrecker and was ostracized and beaten by all the other inmates. Not getting food was a common occurrence. They had long since broken off all ties, and there was no possibility of a proper conversation. At this moment, Mu Wanqing and Zhang Miaoran both looked impatient. Didn't you say you know where Beizhou is? The mother and daughter were initially unwilling to come. People outside had searched for 3 years and still hadn't found him. How could someone locked in prison know? Unless he had cruelly murdered me and hidden the body. But if that were truly the case, he wouldn't have waited until today, 3 years later, to finally be willing to tell them. However, as long as there was a glimmer of hope, they didn't want to let it go. Song Jingnian stretched the half of his mouth that wasn't stiff from the burns and smiled. It looked incredibly bizarre. Even a timid person, seeing this sight, would probably be scared into nightmares. But at this moment, even 8-year-old Zhang Miaoran, when she saw this scene, her expression didn't change at all. He too seemed not to notice, and spoke, his voice hoarse. Yes, I know he is no longer in this world of ours. He has returned to his own world. It's laughable, isn't it? You've tormented me here for him, wasting so much manpower and resources to find him. The truth is, he never loved you at all. Mu Wangqing and Zhang Miaoran heard these words, first stunned, then their second reaction was disbelief. What do you mean, not in this world? What do you mean, never loved them? That's all nonsense. Talking about ghosts and gods, spouting absurdities. The mother and daughter's expressions were surprisingly similar. They thought Song Jingnian was intentionally saying these things to provoke them because of their past torments. They immediately showed anger, their faces hardening, and rose to leave. But he spoke again, calling out to them. Don't you want to know who those two people were in the photo Zhang Beizhou was holding? That time? His hoarse voice, transmitted through the phone carelessly tossed on the table, came out. It was a bit distorted and hard to hear clearly, yet it made Mu Wangqing and Zhang Miaoran, the mother and daughter, both freeze in place. Buried memories suddenly broke through the surface. Memories kept turning pages, finally stopping on that one photo they had only seen once. Clearly, they remembered it too. The slightly yellowed old photo. In the photo, an adult and a child, their eyes filled with love and intimacy. And that longing gaze of mine. He had mumbled about returning to their side in 3 days, and the fingers gently scattering the photos. And when they used a bit of force, my distressed action of snatching the photos back. No matter how I thought about their relationship, it shouldn't be that of friends who hadn't been in touch for a long time. Song Jingnian saw their footsteps halt in place, the corners of his eyes tinged with frenzied delight. He had been tormented for a full 3 years. What right did they have to live comfortably and happily? These past few days, I had a dream. I dreamed of another world. That world was just like ours. But that world had no Mu Wangqing, and no Zhang Miaoran. But that world had Zhang Beizhou. He was leading two people. They were the two people in that photo. One called him husband, one called him father. I could tell his state when he was with them was different from when he was with you. There, his happiness was genuine happiness. His love for them was true love. Not like with you, always compliant, yet living like a puppet. I saw a golden light orb. Zhang Beizhou called it system, and it would occasionally speak to him. That's when I learned that Zhang Beizhou, he wasn't from this world. His coming to accompany you was merely because in his world, his wife and child were in a car accident and became comatose. That's why he took on the companionship mission issued by the system. He accompanied you for 5 years, and one of the mission requirements was to be compliant to your every whim. He never loved you. In his eyes, you were merely mission targets. Song Jingnian spoke with increasing exhilaration, but with every word he uttered, Mu Wangqing and Zhang Miaoran's faces grew paler, until Zhang Miaoran's face lost all color, her eyes filled with bewilderment and helplessness. You're lying. Just 3 short words, but her voice was already tinged with a sob. She wanted to argue, to deny. When she looked up, her eyes brimming with tears, she looked at Mu Wangqing. Mom, he's lying to us, isn't he? How could Dad possibly not love us? How could that be? For 5 years, I was compliant to their every whim. No matter how outrageous a request they made, I would do my best to fulfill it. Even if they wronged me, they didn't even need to apologize. As long as they offered an opening, saying they wanted to eat my cooking, I would eagerly prepare it and bring it to them. Oh, right. Song Jingnian said that was because of the system's requirements. Zhang Miaoran pondered in her heart for a long time, but found that besides companionship and compliance, she couldn't seem to find any other evidence that I loved them. Meanwhile, Mu Wangqing remained silent, not answering her words. Yet in her heart, Song Jingnian's words stirred up a stormy sea. She suddenly remembered how I used to constantly murmur about 7 days, 5 days, 3 days. When she asked me then, I only said it was nothing. But now, reflecting carefully, the day I disappeared, wasn't that the last day of my countdown? Mu Wangqing didn't want to believe it, but the scales of judgment in her heart had already tipped towards Song Jingnian's words, and he still felt the fire wasn't big enough, constantly adding fuel to it. Otherwise, just think about it yourselves. For the past 3 years, the Song family's villa must have been dug up by you countless times, right? He's a 25-year-old man, and he suffered such severe injuries. How could he manage to run out of the villa within 3 short minutes without being caught by any surveillance cameras and leave no trace behind? And how did he obtain the surveillance footage of me harming and whipping him? Was it all because the system intervened to help him? It's truly laughable that I would compete with someone who never truly cared for you and who wasn't even from the same world as us, for you two, mother and daughter, who thought your love was so profound. So I deserve this current outcome. Song Jingnian was insane. Song Jingnian was insane. When Mu Wangqing and Zhang Miaoran left the visiting room, they were also in a daze, their steps faltering. The distance from the prison gate to the car wasn't far, Just a few steps, but they nearly fell 5 times. Bodyguards had to constantly stay by their side to prevent them from making a public spectacle. Back at the Mu family villa, Mu Wanqing locked herself in her room, refusing to see anyone, including Zhang Miaoren. She had been married to me for 5 years and had never considered the possibility that I didn't love her. She just thought I loved her too much. That's why he could love everything associated with me and was completely compliant with my child and Song Jingnian's. That's why he could calmly accept my coldness, the disdain and mockery from my friends. That's why even when I rekindled with Song Jingnian and even brazenly brought Song Jingnian back to the villa, he also remained completely indifferent. But was it truly because he didn't love, so he didn't care? He suddenly felt intensely jealous of the person in that photo, to be loved so deeply by me. To be able to come to this unfamiliar world after their accidental car crash rendered them comatose, marry a complete stranger, and dutifully care for another mother and daughter for 5 years, just to revive those two people. Mu Wanqing had thought her feelings for me were out of guilt, and so she wanted to compensate. Later, even after a long search yielded nothing, she still refused to give up. She thought it was an obsession, but only at this moment did she realize it wasn't. It wasn't guilt, it wasn't obsession, but that she had already fallen in love with me unknowingly. She just couldn't bring herself to admit that she had fallen for a man once called a bootlicker by her sisters. He was so good, but she was timid, afraid to admit it. Even when Song Jingnian said he would take me away, she didn't dare to forcefully mock me. If only she had recognized her feelings earlier, would our story have had a different ending? When I left, would I have felt even a tiny bit of reluctance because of her and Zhang Miaoren? Unfortunately, there are no ifs in this world. In another room, Zhang Miaoren searched the entire villa, but despondently realized that not a single trace of me was left in the villa. So now she couldn't even look at objects and think of me. People only understand the value of things after they lose them. Just like when I was by her side, she took advantage of the fact that I would never be angry with her and would always be completely compliant with her no matter what, wantonly hurting and demeaning me. Now knowing I have another child and she can never see me again, her heart suddenly felt utterly empty, as if she had lost her most beloved toy. Zhang Miaoren also recalled twice finding me burning my things. Thinking about it now, I might have been planning to leave even then. If she had noticed something amiss back then and chosen to step forward and stop me, would everything have been different? Would I have stayed? Would I have at least left her a glimmer of hope? Unfortunately, at that time when she saw my actions, she merely said with extreme disdain, "Everything is trash. You better be burning only your own things." A child's emotions come quickly, and they cannot suppress them like adults. She could only lean against the door of the room I once lived in, hugging her knees and weeping loudly. From now on, she no longer had a father. The villa's servants didn't know what had happened, only that when the two mistresses returned, one locked herself in her room, the only contact being to have wine sent in. The other ran to the master's room and sobbed uncontrollably. No matter how they tried to comfort her, she wouldn't open the door, nor did she stop crying. They could only leave until night fell. The two mother and daughter figures, one had drunk so much wine she passed out. The other, exhausted from crying, fell into a deep sleep leaning against the door. Only then did the villa finally quiet down. That night, Mu Wanqing and Zhang Miaoren met in a dream. In a vast white ethereal space, Mu Wanqing and Zhang Miaoren's eyes were filled with bewilderment. Even though she usually appeared calm enough and more sensible than her peers, Zhang Miaoren still subconsciously leaned towards Mu Wanqing after suddenly arriving in an unfamiliar place. Mu Wanqing, who vaguely sensed the unusual nature of this place, after a brief moment of confusion, also subconsciously pulled Zhang Miaoren behind her, cautiously scanning her surroundings. Just then, a golden light suddenly appeared. After several flashes, it solidified completely before them. System 1107 has received strong desires and successfully linked with its hosts. Hello, two hosts. This is System 1107. It is a pleasure to serve the hosts. Complete the task issued by the system, and you will receive an opportunity to fulfill a wish. Do you wish to bind with the system and fulfill your desires? The turn of events was too fantastical. Mu Wanqing and Zhang Miaoren exchanged glances, feeling as if they were dreaming. Recalling her last conversation with Song Jingnian, she subconsciously reached out her right hand and pinched her left hand hard. No feeling. Zhang Miaoren watched her mother pinch her own left hand. The disheartening feeling after the pinch was beyond words. Couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. Is it really a dream? System. It knew at a glance what they were thinking. So it explained that this place was not a dream. The reason they couldn't feel pain was because only souls could enter the system space. Only if the soul was damaged would they feel pain. But given that soul damage is irreversible, it does not recommend trying. The last sentence completely dispelled Mu Wangqing's idea of trying. She hasn't seen me again yet. How could she first suffer irreversible damage? Thinking of this, she tightened her grip on Zheng Miaoren's hand. She looked up at the golden light mass. Can it really help us fulfill our wishes? Anything? Even go to another world to see the person I want to see? Hearing Mu Wangqing's series of questions, Zheng Miaoren's heart couldn't help but fill with hope. Since 3 years ago, when she learned I had suffered so much injustice, and later knew I came to them with ulterior motives, for 3 years, she constantly thought about being able to see me again. Now, suddenly learning that she could see me again, she was extremely excited, yet also feared it would ultimately be nothing but emptiness. Yes, as long as you complete the tasks issued by the system, you can obtain the opportunity to fulfill your wish. Given the special nature of the host's wish, there are now 2 choices. First choice, the companion system. Randomly travel to a world, accompany the mission target for 5 years. During this period, you cannot refuse any request from the mission target. After the task is completed, you will receive 1 reward of wish fulfillment. Second choice, the wealth scattering system. Enter a designated world, choose a designated mission target, and 90% of the property acquired in the mission world will be bound. It will be transferred by any means to the mission target's name. And after choosing to enter the mission world, you will no longer be able to return to your original world. The 2 choices corresponded to 2 paths. Mu Wangqing and Zheng Miaoren exchanged a glance and spoke without the slightest hesitation, stating their agreement. I choose the second option. That world, for them, no longer held anything worth lingering for. As long as they could stay by my side forever, what did it matter if 90% of their property had to be transferred to me? This was originally what they owed me, and what should be compensated to me. As for that so-called companion system, and having to be utterly obedient and accompany others for 5 years, they couldn't wait another moment. The golden light mass bounced up and down, seemingly nodding. The next moment, the electronic mechanical voice rang out. Task acceptance successful. World portal connecting. As the sound rang out, Mu Wangqing and Zheng Miaoren's visions spun, a dizzying blur, and soon they completely lost consciousness. When the mother and daughter awoke, the scene before their eyes had already changed. The white ceiling and the pungent smell of disinfectant all declared their current location to be in a hospital. Hazily opening their eyes, they saw a nurse busy changing their IV drip. Hearing the movement, the nurse looked back, a habitual smile on her face. You're awake. In the 3rd year after returning to the original world, I suddenly received a call from an unfamiliar number. At this time, I was at the Rehabilitation Center of Jing City Central Hospital, rehabilitating with Bai Luoyan and Zhang Yuyan. Although it had been 3 years since they awoke, from their vegetative state, the prolonged coma combined with the damage from the car accident meant they still needed rehabilitation to slowly return to their original state. This was our last visit. The phone rang precisely at this moment. Hello, may I speak to Mr. Zhang Beizhou? I answered the phone. It was an unfamiliar female voice. After receiving my affirmative reply, she continued, This is the inpatient department of Jing City Central Hospital. We have 2 patients who say they are your friends. Would you be able to come over? 2 patients? I was a little surprised, but thinking it wasn't far, I still agreed. Okay, the call ended. I said goodbye to Bai Luoyan and Zhang Yuyan and got up to walk towards the inpatient department. The inpatient department was on the 5th floor, opposite the rehabilitation center. I took the elevator over, and the nurse's station was right in front of me. After asking for the specific room number, I walked over. In the cramped ward, blue curtains separated several beds. Only the curtains between the 2 beds in the very center were not drawn. Evidently, they were the 2 patients looking for me. I walked forward, but when I saw the 2 people sitting on the hospital beds, I suddenly froze. Mu Wangqing? Zhang Miaoren. Weren't they people from the mission world? Mu Wangqing? Zhang Miaoren? Weren't they people from the mission world? How could they be here? And in such a pathetic state? In that world, they were immensely wealthy. They had whatever they desired. When had they ever lived in such a dilapidated house? And Mu Wangqing and her daughter Zhang Miaoren, when they saw me, their eyes suddenly welled up. Beizhou, we've missed you so much. You went to such great lengths to find me. What for? After a brief moment of stunned silence, I quickly regained my usual composure. The way I looked at them was as if I were looking at strangers. My distant and cold gaze pierced their hearts. Zhang Miaoren even jumped directly off the hospital bed and hugged my leg. Daddy! Mommy and I know we were wrong. Please forgive Mommy and me, okay? Before, I was ignorant. I took advantage of your indulgence and deliberately bullied you. But now I've really learned my lesson. In just a few short sentences, tears welled up in her eyes. Coupled with her cute and delicate features, she was incredibly endearing. Mu Wanqing couldn't bring herself to speak. She also wanted to hug me and cry like that. She could only secretly envy her in her heart. After pursing her lips, she hesitantly opened her mouth. Beizhou, we've been looking for you for 3 years. Before, I greatly misunderstood you and allowed Song Jingnian to hurt you too many times. But after I learned the truth, I made sure he got his just desserts and even sent him to prison. Beizhou, we all know we were wrong. You can punish us however you want. Just please don't leave us, okay? The once cold, decisive, and resolute, richest woman, Mu Wanqing, who in front of me, always maintained her cool aloofness. Now finally, after reuniting with the person she had yearned for 3 years, after meeting again, lowered her noble head, begging for a shred of my pity. Yet I, who was always compliant with their every wish back then, whom everyone said loved them desperately, when facing their humble pleas for mercy, felt not the slightest ripple in my heart. The patient in the adjacent bed heard our commotion, pulled back the curtain, and peeked over curiously, taking in Mu Wanqing and Zhang Miaoren's awkward predicament. Just as they were about to inwardly exclaim, "What a heartless man! He can even abandon his wife and child." At the moment they thought he could just leave his wife and child behind, they heard my voice. I do indeed have a wife and children, but it's not you, Ms. Mu. We are merely casual acquaintances. If you merely wish to stay here, there's no need to drag me into it. If my wife and children were to see this, they would get jealous. I mercilessly pushed Zhang Miaoren off my leg. After saying these words, I turned and left the ward directly, leaving behind a room full of intensely curious patients who all turned their gazes toward us, watching the show. It was winter then. Snowflakes drifted down in swirling patterns from the sky. I stopped in the corridor, watching the gracefully falling snowflakes. I reached out and caught one. The icy touch melted instantly in my palm, finally turning into a tiny droplet of water. 3 years later, I had thought I'd forgotten all about the transmigration and everything related to it. But now, the appearance of Mu Wanqing and Zhang Miaoren abruptly brought back all those sealed memories. I suddenly remembered the day I completed the mission. The transmigration and the system were too fantastical. Too fantastical. When I woke up again to find myself back in my familiar room, in a daze I even thought I had merely experienced a very real dream. But I was a physical transmigrator, and the system could transport me back to 5 years ago, right after I left. However, all the injuries my body sustained in the mission world could not be avoided and transmigrated back with me. Transmigrated back. My body was covered in wounds, large and small, some with flesh torn open. I hadn't had time to treat them yet, and they were still oozing blood. There was a first aid kit in the villa, but I didn't even have the strength to stand up. How could I possibly retrieve the first aid kit and then apply the medicine myself? Although the maid could bring me the first aid kit and help me apply the medicine, I couldn't explain the source of all these scars. Fortunately, the system did not completely leave after bringing me back. Seeing my predicament, and remembering that I had received such severe injuries, to complete the mission, it actively healed my wounds. Streaks of golden light were steadily sent from the system into my body. Soon, I felt a surge in my body, a refreshing sensation. I raised my hand in surprise. The hand that just moments ago showed exposed flesh was now restored to its original state, even more delicate than before. Not like the hand that had served Mu Wanqing and Zhang Miaoren, mother and daughter always compliant, as a housekeeper for 5 years. The moment my body fully recovered, my phone rang. I answered. On the other end, the caregiver's voice was full of joyous surprise. "Sir, Ms. Bai and the young miss are awake." I immediately hung up the phone and hastily called a driver to rush to Jing City Central Hospital. A half-hour journey was forcefully compressed into 10 minutes. I couldn't wait for the elevator, stopping floor by floor from the 5th floor. I simply ran directly towards the stairs. When I arrived at the ward, breathless, and pushed open the door, the people inside immediately looked at me. In the afternoon sunlight, Bai Luoyan's elegant and charming face still carried a hint of paleness from recent recovery. A year of being bedridden made her originally well-proportioned figure appear a little frail. Her pale lips curved into a faint smile. Her eyes, the moment they saw me, could no longer look away. Zhang Yuyan, usually well-behaved and gentle, was held in Bai Luoyan's arms, with teardrops in the corners of her eyes, looking like a pitiful child who had just cried. Hearing the sound of the door opening, her little head immediately turned. Seeing it was me, she immediately patted her mother's hand, urging her to let go, then pattered over. As I squatted down and opened my arms, she rushed into my embrace. "Daddy, I'm so glad you're okay." Including the year she was in a coma, a vegetative state, Due to the car accident, Zhang Yuyan, who was just 5 years old, had a brush with death. She still couldn't be as calm as Bai Luoyun. The car accident had us in the same vehicle. She and her mother had both suffered such severe injuries. Naturally, she was also afraid that even under their protection, I would still inevitably get hurt, afraid she would be separated from her father forever. Even more afraid that she and her mother would leave first, leaving me alone. I held Zhang Yuyan tightly in my arms. Large tears rolled down from the corners of my eyes. Before they could drop onto the striped hospital gown on her shoulder, a small hand gently wiped them away. I looked up. My vision blurred with tears. I wanted to speak, but the bitterness and unspoken grievances in my throat choked me, making my nose tip red. Tears fell in large drops again. Bai Luoyun patiently wiped away all the tear stains from my face. A gentle kiss landed on my cheek. She wrapped an arm around me, bringing both the adult and the child into her embrace, gently comforting me. I'm sorry. The child and I made you worry during this time. It won't happen again. Don't cry anymore or my heart will ache. Zhang Yuyan's small hand also continuously patted my back until my emotions finally subsided. The nurse who came for rounds saw them like this and smiled, offering a few words of comfort. It's a good thing to wake up. 2 vegetative patients waking up in a row is like 2 miracles happening at once. With such luck, I believe Ms. Bai and the little one will both get better. Only Bai Luoyun and Zhang Yuyan were awake. I hadn't felt much yet, but now with others present, I finally belatedly felt a little shy. I haphazardly wiped my face, stood up, and smiled shyly. How could this not be a miracle? Originally, they could only have died so quietly, but I miraculously encountered the system. However, enduring 5 years of grievance could exchange for their vitality. I profited from it. But waking up doesn't mean complete recovery. Many sequelae from the car accident still require long-term rehabilitation to gradually reach the most perfect state. Fortunately, with the system's help, the rehabilitation process went smoothly. Daddy! 2 calls of Beizhou startled me from my memories. I turned around and saw Bai Luoyun and Zhang Yuyan, mother and daughter, standing under the eaves on the other side, their eyes filled with love and tenderness. Suddenly, a gust of wind blew, carrying snowflakes that swirled towards them, finally landing on their hair and shoulders. I traversed the wind and snow, yet stood opposite them as if in a blazing summer. Just a few steps, and my head was covered in flying snow. Daddy and Mommy's hair are both white. Is this what the ancients called growing old together? Bai Luoyun smiled and nodded, and then gently wiped the snow from my body. She adjusted my scarf, placed the umbrella into Zhang Yuyan's hand, picked her up with one arm, and held my hand with the other. Let's go. Home, yes, home. Their fingers intertwined, holding each other close. Zhang Yuyan used both hands, barely managing to stabilize the umbrella to cover all 3 of them. Her voice was full of joyous excitement. We're home. Behind them, Mu Wanqing and Zhang Miaoren watched our family, the 3 of them harmonious and warm in their interactions. Their eyes were bloodshot, their throats felt constricted. They hadn't forgotten they had chased after me, hoping to soften my heart, wishing for me to return to their side. Yet at this moment, they couldn't bring themselves to move their legs to chase after Mom. Dad, will he never come back? To be my dad? Zhang Miaoren's eyes were bloodshot. Mu Wanqing looked up, watching the direction I, Bai Luoyun, and Zhang Yuyan had left. The sob in her voice was so thick it seemed she would burst into tears any second. She wanted to find an answer, a negative answer. But Mu Wanqing merely shook her head, saying nothing. No one knew if what she meant was, I won't abandon them, or I will never look back. Golden light flickered before the 2 of them. A mechanical electronic voice announced their first mission since arriving in this world. Host, please find work as soon as possible and arrange enrollment matters. Their future would proceed according to the system's plan, steadily moving forward, studying and working to acquire a continuous stream of wealth. But the wealth would never truly belong to them. I saw Mu Wanqing and Zhang Miaoren, the mother and daughter, again at school. Zhang Yuyan's homeroom teacher called me, saying that my child had gotten into a fight at school. They hoped I could come to handle the situation. I hung up the phone and hurried to school, though I was utterly bewildered. After all, Zhang Yuyan had always been well-behaved and obedient, never having gotten into a fight with a classmate before. It wasn't until I arrived at school and saw the other child with injuries on their face, but still full of anger, that I vaguely had a guess. Sure enough, when the person arrived, Zhang Miaoren's angry expression instantly fractured. Dad, I didn't bully my classmate. Zhang Yuyan had no injuries on her body, but her posture was as if she had suffered a great injustice. She pointed at Zhang Miaoren, who stood opposite her, and complained, She provoked me first. She also said you're her dad, not my dad. Zhang Miaoran truly hadn't expected that Zhang Yuyan's dad would actually be me. After all, she had only seen Zhang Yuyan twice. Once 3 years ago through a photo, and once a month ago. She couldn't quite recall the former, and for the latter, she hadn't clearly seen the child's appearance. This fight was simply because she saw my picture and subconsciously said something, and then her dad was punched hard by Zhang Yuyan. Of course, she wasn't going to be outdone, wanting to fight back, but she couldn't even touch Zhang Yuyan. Zhang Miaoran had originally intended to wait for Mu Wanqing to come and back her up. Having not cried even after taking several punches just now, she now saw me heading straight for Zhang Yuyan, and her eyes immediately turned red. "Dad," she pouted, looking at me gently, coaxing someone else, her heart filled with grievance. "It shouldn't be like this. I used to be so good to her. Even if it was for a mission, how could 5 years of companionship just be forgotten so easily?" Zhang Yuyan heard her aggrieved cry of "Dad," and unreservedly rolled her eyes at her. "I already told you, this is my dad. Don't you have your own dad? Why are you trying to steal my dad?" The teacher looked at me somewhat awkwardly, not knowing our relationship, and found it difficult to intervene, especially since the other child was particularly prone to arguing over this matter, and even getting physical. "Dad will only ever be your dad, and won't be anyone else's mom." "Dad, I didn't even look." Zhang Miaoran first patted her back, helping her calm down, but with a hint of disapproval in his eyes. "Yuyan, you're not usually so impulsive. Can you tell Dad why you hit your classmate?" Zhang Yuyan pouted. Actually, she didn't know why. It was just that when she saw Zhang Miaoran, she subconsciously felt a sense of repulsion and dislike toward her. When she heard her call me Dad, the irritation in her heart became uncontrollable. But seeing my sudden frown, she still sighed and reached out to smooth the wrinkle from my brow. "Dad, I know fighting is bad. I won't do it again." The mother and daughter paid no attention. Zhang Miaoran, who was behind us, only treated him as if he were transparent. It was at this moment that Mu Wanqing arrived. Zhang Miaoran was very intelligent. Elementary school curriculum. As early as in their original world, she had already completed it through self-study. Just to fit in, she casually chose a school that looked good, but she didn't expect to meet me here. She subconsciously wanted to approach me, but upon meeting my wary gaze, she timidly retreated. "Miss, please trouble yourself to properly teach your daughter. I know she lost her mother at a young age and is pitiful, but my daughter doesn't like others casually calling me our dad." The sorrow in Mu Wanqing's eyes was so thick it was almost palpable. She opened her mouth, wanting to explain something, but in the end, nothing came out. She could only lower her head and offer a deep apology. "I will make her change her address." Zhang Miaoran's eyes widened, unable to believe that Mu Wanqing would actually tell her to change her address. "But Dad is Dad. Why should she change her address?" "Mom," Mu Wanqing rubbed her head, sighed, and didn't explain to her. They had already been in this world for a month. During this month, Mu Wanqing had replayed their past countless times, regardless of whether she had approached him with an ulterior motive. But during those 5 years, she had indeed never wronged him. It was they who had wronged him. It was natural for him to blame them now. But Mu Wanqing also believed that as long as they were sincere enough, he would eventually accept them. It didn't matter if she couldn't be his wife. If one day he softened towards Zhang Miaoran, they would then have the chance for further reconciliation. With things as they were now, she led the person out of the office. She earnestly advised, "It's okay. When we came to this world, weren't we already prepared for Beizhou not accepting us? Now what you need to do is act pitiful. Let him see your wrong side, until he is willing to accept you. He is a father. If he sees the one he diligently raised for 5 years being wronged, he won't be able to remain heartless after all, and ignore Zhang Miaoran, right?" Meanwhile, I was unaware of their thoughts. If I had known, I would probably just have given a mocking laugh. My approaching them was originally to revive Bai Luoyan and Zhang Yuyan. Based solely on those 5 years of interaction, there was simply no affection between us. Days passed one by one. Soon it was New Year's Eve. The Zhang family was filled with joy and harmony. The servants were also on holiday. The lights, burning through the night, enveloped the villa. In the kitchen, I followed Bai Luoyan, watching her bring out the dumpling dough. The suggestion to make dumplings ourselves was mine. When I was in the Mu family to take care of Zhang Miaoran, I forced myself to learn many skills. My cooking skills, in particular, became proficient, comparable to a 5-star chef. However, since returning to this world, I haven't had the chance to cook myself. Usually either the servants or Bai Luoyan prepared the meals. This time, convincing the servants to take a holiday, I planned to make them myself. Who knew that most of the work was still taken over by Bai Luoyan and Zhang Yuyan together? Just as the three of us were joking around and recording a video, the doorbell suddenly rang. The three of us exchanged confused glances, wondering who would come here at this hour. In the end, all three of us went to open the door. Mu Wanqing stood outside, holding Zhang Miaoren's hand. The moment Zhang Yuyan saw the two of them, she pouted. "What are you doing here?" "How rude!" Her tone was very poor. Bai Luoyan slapped the back of her head, scolding her with a laugh. But it was clearly just a polite gesture and not meant to truly blame her. Watching her huff softly, clinging to my leg, unwilling to spare them another glance, was a little amusing. She paused, then turned her attention to the two people outside. "And you are?" Mu Wanqing and Zhang Miaoren didn't mind. Their gazes selectively ignored everyone else, looking straight at me. "Bijou, can we talk to you alone?" "I'm sorry, miss. It's not appropriate to talk alone at this time." Seeing me refuse without a trace of mercy, Mu Wanqing and Zhang Miaoren's faces paled slightly. They seemed not to have expected me to refuse so bluntly. Her heart felt bitter, but still refused to leave. Zhang Miaoren's eyes instantly reddened. Her voice was full of grievance and a sobbing tone. "Dad, do you really not want us anymore?" Helpless, I was just about to say something when I heard Zhang Yuyan's voice like it was laced with dynamite, full of fire. "Zhang Miaoren, haven't you had enough of a beating from last time? If you want a dad, go find your own dad. Don't cling to my dad. Otherwise, I'm telling you, I'll hit you every time I see you." I was startled, and Bai Luoyan was equally stunned. I don't know why my usually docile and obedient daughter had suddenly become so irritable. This aggressive remark, full of hostility, further frightened Zhang Miaoren, who couldn't help but let out a hiccup. Zhang Yuyan glanced at her disdainfully, then looked at Mu Wanqing, and even rolled her eyes directly at her. "You clinging hanger-on. If you have something to say it quickly. Spit it out. If not, then scram." Ever since that dad, Zhang Yuyan's attitude plummeted. Mu Wanqing was unwilling to leave, but under the death glares from the Bai family mother and daughter, she could only steel herself and handed over the things she had already prepared. She closed her eyes briefly, trying hard to put on a gentle and friendly demeanor. "Bijou, Happy New Year." I lowered my gaze and looked at the gift box. Just as I was about to refuse, a golden light flashed out. "This is just a system task, but I still suggest that host accept it. Afterward, no matter what purpose host uses it for, the system will no longer interfere." I was stunned for a moment. Looking at the two people in front of me, Mu Wanqing and Zhang Miaoren's expressions had not changed. They seemed unable to see the system's conversation with me. The system flashed again, explaining, "The system can choose any target to appear to. Those not chosen, even if they are bound to the host, cannot see it. For this system that resurrected my beloved and my child, I still trusted it very much. Since the system advised me to accept it, I thought for a moment, and the refusal that was about to blurt out was taken back by me. I accepted the gift and said a word of thanks. Mu Wanqing and Zhang Miaoren thought that their efforts had paid off. A bright light instantly flashed in their eyes, without a hint of their previous dejection. "All right, the gift has been delivered. You should leave now." Bai Luoyan's eyes narrowed slightly, her voice filled with a strong displeasure. Her words of dismissal were completely undisguised. Mu Wanqing and Zhang Miaoren didn't know why. Bai Luoyan, who had been silent moments ago, had suddenly started to drive them away. But since the gift had already been delivered, although they were somewhat displeased, they didn't dwell on it. Unable to find a taxi at the villa, Mu Wanqing and Zhang Miaoren could only walk away. Over the past few months, the two of them often took advantage of times when I was alone to try and assert their presence. But most of the time, it was fruitless. This was the first time I hadn't refused or deliberately alienated them. Perhaps what they had been doing during this time was right. Meanwhile, back at the Zhang family villa, I casually placed the gift box in my hand on the nearby coffee table. Looking at the two women, one big and one small, in front of me, my gaze continuously swept back and forth between them. And I asked them, feigning seriousness, "Tell me, what exactly have you two been hiding from me?" Their hostility towards Zhang Miaoren and Mu Wanqing earlier was too obvious, so obvious that it was hard for me not to notice. Bai Luoyan and Zhang Yuyan exchanged glances, then chuckled after a moment. Their laughter left me utterly confused, and I immediately felt a surge of anger. I slapped the table, my tone also carrying a hint of fury. Seeing that I was genuinely angry, Bai Luoyan quickly poured a glass of water and handed it to me. Zhang Yuyan quickly patted my back with her small hand, trying to soothe me. "Dad, don't be angry first. Mom and I will tell you everything. Actually, it's nothing much. It's just that recently Yuyan and I both had a dream. In the dream, they had been in a coma for over a year. From another perspective, they saw everything I had done for them. From the moment they fell into a coma, I knelt in the operating room, praying to the heavens for them to survive. After learning they were in a vegetative state, I crawled step by step on my knees up 3,000 steps to the most sacred Wangguang temple, begging the gods and Buddhas for their recovery. They were heartbroken, wishing they could take my place. When they saw my bleeding knees, they hated themselves even more. It was their incompetence that required me to go to such lengths for them. In just 1 year, I tried every possible method, but all were in vain. Until that golden glowing system found me, I finally found a way to save them. The price was 5 years of freedom and dignity. The mother and daughter watching me, who had never suffered much since childhood, to save them, travel to another world and marry someone else, obediently, meticulously caring for that mother and daughter. What I received in return was when their white moonlight returned, being unhesitatingly abandoned. They didn't understand why someone could consider not divorcing as a charity or a gift, and that I should be grateful to them. When they saw me again, with only 1 day left until I could leave, they couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief for me. Yet they also saw Mu Wanqing and Zhang Miaoren confidently handing me over to that ruthless, vicious Song Jingnian. I was finally free and they woke up. They could finally shield me under their wings, again allowing me to do what I wanted. But at this moment, they came chasing after me, saying they wanted forgiveness. Why should they? When they didn't love, they hurt me arbitrarily. When they regretted, they clung to me relentlessly. I'm sorry, Beijo. We failed to protect you. As I listened to them recounting everything they had experienced over the years, repeating it all, I, who hadn't shed a tear when I personally experienced it, suddenly found my eyes welling up. The grievances suppressed deep in my heart burst forth. I hugged one with each arm, wiping my tears on their clothes, saying, "It's all your fault. Why did you only wake up now?" On the other side of this world, in a cramped, dilapidated rental apartment, because most of their assets had been given to me, Mu Wanqing and Zhang Miaoren had once lived a very difficult life. After all, even when they woke up, their hospital fees were temporarily borrowed from the system and needed to be repaid promptly. Fortunately, he was the richest man in his previous life and very astute in business. In just a few months, he repaid the debt using only the remaining balance of one city. He repaid the debt. At this moment, the mother and daughter huddled on the filthy sofa, pondering when they could replace it while watching the screen before them. And on that screen was none other than the Zhang family villa, where I was seen hugging Bai Luoyan and Zhang Yuyan. Indeed, when they became the parties involved, they always thought that if they just coaxed me well enough, I would always return to them. But only at this moment did they realize it wasn't true. Firstly, the bond between me and Bai Luoyan and the mother and daughter, Zhang Yuyan, was far from what it used to be. It couldn't compare to Mu Wanqing, who had never truly acknowledged me. Just as I could kneel to the heavens for Bai Luoyan and Zhang Yuyan, praying to gods and Buddhas, willing to accept the companionship mission for Bai Luoyan, and the mother and daughter, Zhang Yuyan, being completely obedient to them. And no matter what grievances I endured, I wouldn't leave. Yet, the moment the mission ended 5 years later, I unhesitatingly left that world. Just as I would express my grievances and cry freely before Bai Luoyan and the mother and daughter Zhang Yuyan, and cry freely, but before them I was like a tireless machine. Just as I would act spoiled with Bai Luoyan and the mother and daughter Zhang Yuyan and say, "It's all your fault," I would never truly get angry with them. However, the gifts they sent, I would politely unwrap, then casually toss aside. Mu Wanqing and Zhang Miaoren held no comparison to Bai Luoyan and Zhang Yuyan in my heart. They discovered this truth in despair, yet had to curse themselves for deserving it, just as I also accompanied Zhang Yuyan and Zhang Bai Miaoren for 5 years. If Zhang Miaoren had shown even a little respect during those 5 years, treating me as her father, and not after I painstakingly raised her for 5 years, because of Song Jingnian's return, refused to call me dad again, even saying to my face that she only had one father. Perhaps if they had come to this world together, I would not have treated them so heartlessly. But now they have no room left for reconciliation. He no longer has a father. From this moment on, or perhaps even earlier, from the moment he truly accepted Mu Wanqing's friend's words, thought I was just someone who could take good care of them, a nanny. There was no father anymore. The light gradually dimmed. Zhang Miaoren couldn't hold back anymore and threw herself into Mu Wanqing's arms, sobbing loudly. Zhang family villa. I finally remembered the gift box the system told me to keep. Curiously, I picked up the box and opened it. The box wasn't big. Inside, there was only a passbook and a note. "In the past, Wanqing and I wronged you. Consider this our compensation to you. As long as we are alive, we will deposit money into this passbook. We hope you don't find it too little. I opened the passbook and glanced at it. It had a balance of just over 10,000. It seemed that now their lives were indeed not going well. That evening, I still made dumplings by hand. I always thought no matter what, no matter how many meals, I had cooked for Mu Wangqing and Zhang Miaoran, so it made no sense that my true family had never eaten food I personally prepared. After eating and drinking to our fill, it was time for some playful banter. When children are full of energy, they can be so noisy that no one can sleep. But when sleepiness hits, they fall asleep faster than anyone. Zhang Yuyan was quite excited at first. After all, she was rarely allowed to sleep outside of her normal routine. One moment she'd clamor to see this, the next she'd clamor to play that. It was the first time I had seen her unleash her playful nature like this. Usually she was more like a little adult, knowing when to advance and when to retreat, gentle and reasonable. She was just like Bai Luoyun, a perfect replica molded from the same cast. But as soon as the clock hands past midnight, Zhang Yuyan, having stayed up through the first half of the night, seemed to suddenly have her winding key removed. Her little head nodded with sleepiness, and she couldn't muster any interest in anything. When I gently picked her up and placed her back on the bed, she was still mumbling softly, "Daddy, I want to stay up with Daddy." I chuckled softly, kissed her forehead, and then turned to leave the room. But just as I closed the door for her and stepped back, I bumped into a warm embrace. I was startled at first, but after realizing what happened, I turned around irritably and slapped her arm. "What are you doing?" Standing silently behind me, without a sound. "Don't you know that scaring people can scare them to death?" I grumbled, looking up, and my gaze met her eyes. The hand wrapped around my waist tightened unconsciously. She looked like an expressionless, aloof beauty, but when she spoke, she turned into a pitiful, wrong little thing. "I also want you to hug my waist and rub my back." I, however, didn't cooperate, deliberately feigning ignorance. "Want what?" I still wanted to tease her, a hint of a smile in the corner of my eye. The next second, her kiss arrived as promised. The following day at noon, after I had lunch, I went for a walk in a nearby park with Bai Luoyun and Zhang Yuyan. As we were strolling, Mu Wangqing and Zhang Miaoran suddenly blocked our path. Only one night had passed, but their condition was drastically different from when they left last night. Ignoring the dark faces and cold stares of the Bai family mother and daughter, Mu Wangqing and Zhang Miaoran's gazes were fixed intently on me. Perhaps fearing they would be driven away, the Mu family mother and daughter, after stopping us, quickly spoke. "Beizhou, let's talk alone. Just this once, just once. We promise you after this, we will never actively appear before you again." Perhaps they were truly desperate for this conversation. Mu Wangqing even gambled all their future on this one chance. Actually, I wanted to tell them they could call bodyguards. But after thinking about it, I decided against it. It seemed they could always find me so precisely, and the system likely had something to do with it. If the system was involved, ordinary bodyguards might not be able to stop them. Exchanging one encounter for permanent peace in the future didn't seem like a losing deal. I turned to look at Bai Luoyun and Zhang Yuyan and smiled at them. "Then you two wait for me a moment. I'll be right back." Okay. Although they really didn't want me to be alone with Mu Wangqing and Zhang Miaoran, since I had already made my decision, they naturally wouldn't object. The three of us didn't go too far. We casually chose a stone table sheltered by a pavilion and sat down. "If you have something to say it quickly." My voice was indifferent, devoid of joy, disgust, or hatred, much like the person before me. Just two strangers with no relation to me. Mu Wangqing's lips twitched, a bitter taste spread. Her gaze traced my features, as if to deeply engrave my appearance into her mind. But she didn't dare to delay too long. Afraid of provoking my aversion, she could only quickly speak. "Beizhou, do you really like them?" It was obvious who them referred to. I frowned and looked at her. My eyes seemed to ask, what a foolish question is that? But she pressed her lips together, appearing exceptionally stubborn, insisting on hearing that answer from my own lips. "Of course, we are childhood sweethearts. She chose me, and I chose her. Yuyan is the child my wife carried for 10 months and gave birth to. She honors me, protects me, loves me. If I don't love her, who would I love? Love you and Zhang Miaoran? Am I a masochist? To love someone who treated me as a nanny, never gave me trust, and could casually hand me over to others?" I tilted my head, my eyes held in unyielding confusion. And the two people before me, with my successive rhetorical questions, had their faces flushed with shame. Indeed, they had done so many outrageous things. How could they dare to hope I would forgive them and return to their side? "I'm sorry, Papa. I'm sorry, Beizhou." After a long silence, Mu Wangqing and Zhang Miaoran both lowered their heads in shame. Their apologies were faint, barely audible. Yet I shook my head, You have never experienced what I have experienced. Therefore, I do not intend to accept your apologies. Oh, and regarding your forms of address, if I recall correctly, I've already said Miss Mu. I hope next time I won't hear you call me Papa or Beijo again. I only have one daughter, Yuyan, and our relationship isn't intimate enough to address me by my given name. If there's nothing else to discuss, then I'll be leaving now. Having said that, I stood up and walked out of the pavilion. Upon hearing my words, Mu Wangqing and Zhang Miaoren's eyes widened sharply. Coincidentally, after I stood up, they also stood up, softly calling out to stop me. Wait! My steps paused. I turned my head slightly to look at them. Something else? Papa, are you really not giving us any chance at all? Zhang Miaoren's eyes were red-rimmed. Her lips turned downwards, looking utterly wronged. Mu Wenqing's voice also trembled, her eyes fixed intently on me, hoping to discern a hint of defiance in my eyes. Beijo, must you be so heartless and sever all ties? Hearing their words, I raised an eyebrow and chuckled softly. Heartless, am I? Didn't I also say that if you also experienced everything I have experienced, I could of course forgive you? 3 years have passed, and you still haven't done it, have you? Having said that, I no longer waited for Mu Wangqing and Zhang Miaoren's reactions. I walked directly out of the pavilion, towards Hebai Luoyan, who was already waiting outside, and Zhang Yuyan. Papa, are you done talking? Seeing me emerge, Zhang Yuyan quickly came forward and held my right hand. I nodded. Bai Luoyan also naturally stepped forward and held my other hand. No one spoiled the mood by proactively bringing up the Mu family mother and daughter behind us. The three of us walked side by side. Suddenly, light snow began to fall from the sky. Snowflakes drifted down gently, scattering like stars upon our shoulders, forming a beautiful and romantic scene. Later, I truly never saw the Mu family mother and daughter again. When I next heard news of them, it was already 3 years later. He was indeed very capable and had rebuilt a business empire. But on that very day, the Mu family mother and daughter suffered a car accident on their way out. 4 months later, a lawyer found me with a will, stating that Mu Wangqing and Zhang Miaoren's entire fortune was bequeathed to me. I accepted this inheritance, but I did not claim it for myself. Instead, I found a trustworthy foundation and donated all the money. From then on, Mu Wangqing and Zhang Miaoren ceased to exist in the world. And so, I also completely returned to my original timeline.